Welcome to the Gabrielle Lara Show, a podcast created for the new and aspiring entrepreneur who's navigating the messy middle part of their entrepreneurial journey. I'm your host, Gabrielle. I'm a niche expert and a sales coach who helps coaches like you find your niche and sell in a way that's authentic to you so that you can have a thriving business. I'll be inviting entrepreneurs from all walks of life onto these episodes to share their story of how they went from an aspiring entrepreneur to a CEO and all the messy parts they navigated in between so that you do not feel alone on this journey. Sit back, relax, and stay a while because you are more than welcome here. Welcome back to another episode of the Gabrielle Lara Show. This is a really special episode because I have never interviewed two people at once on this show, but I have Abbey and Courtney with me, and they are two wonderful women who I'm not going to spoil it. I'll let them jump into what they do and their stories and all of that, but I'm really excited to have them on the show today because they work together in their business, and I'm sure you both have individually really awesome stories. And then collectively, too, I'm going to have them share their stories of starting a business together and the messy that they had to navigate to do that. So I'm going to pass it off. I'm like, which one do I start with? So this is fun going through two stories in one episode. But Abbey, if you want to start us off, we'll dive into that, share your story, and then we'll pass it on over to Courtney.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course.
This is exciting. We do have different stories, but we came together kind of at the same point, I'd say, of like
I
what we
love
were
that.
looking for. I start basically how I started in marketing because that's our business is solely focused on marketing. So, how I kind of started there was in school, obviously. I started there, I did an internship, and the internship actually ended up being the job that I had for the rest of my corporate career. I stayed there and I never left.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I worked there through multiple changes, basically, of like the company being bought and sold and bought and sold. And so I changed with the company, grew with the company. I loved it. And there was a certain time in my life when I wanted to climb that ladder to VP. Like I loved it. And then I hit a point where we started as a very small agency and it was very enjoyable. And then I hit a point where I was we were bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just felt like another, peg. And it wasn't very desirable anymore to grow within the company. And that was kind of the point where I was like, what should I do?
Yeah.
So I loved to travel at the time. And at one point I spun off and I was like, maybe I should go into travel, like be a travel advisor, a travel planner, and do that and like start at the bottom again and work my way up. And actually, at that point, I still was really close with one of my high school teachers. And I would get coffee with him every now and again. And I sat down with him and he was like, "Why do you need someone to hire you? Why don't you just start it yourself?" And I was like, "What? I can't just plan a travel trip. Like, don't you need licenses?" And like, I just like at the time, just starting my own business felt crazy. And so that's when I actually he's kind of like the sole inspiration of like, I guess I can just like do things myself. I never thought about it that way, which is cool. But then from there, I started working with a travel blogger. So I kind of stayed in the realm and she wanted help with SEO. And I knew nothing about it at the time. And I just started blogging for her 3 days a week. And with that, which 3 days a week, writing 3 blogs a
Yeah.
week is heavy. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
think I was paid 500 a month and I thought that was a ton of money at the time. And it was intense, but
Yeah.
I learned so much. And like 3 months into it, her pages were showing up on page 1 of Google, and I was like, "This is so cool." And it was very much like a trial and error of keyword research and doing a bunch of stuff. And so that was something I never did at our agency. And so that is kind of like was my on the side thing as I was working. And that's kind of where the story, I guess, merges with Court, is where we just really started ideating, like, what the heck can we do to get out of here? Like, we'd go to coffee shops and we'd talk. And I had just gotten back from maternity leave. And that's when I've noticed this with a lot of people too, is like the second they start to grow
Yeah.
their family or things change, their goals change and like what they want to do with their life changes. And I was definitely at that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Oh
So,
my gosh. Okay, so before I'm gonna dive further
right.
into your story. Courtney, let's hear your story and then we'll just merge them together. And I think that will be such like a beautiful transition
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I grew up always knowing that I was going to be in the design world somehow.
there.
Wasn't sure how exactly, but I knew that I wanted to go to college to pursue my design degree. So, went to college. Grew up in South Dakota, moved to the big city,
Mhm.
Minneapolis, and went to college for my visual communications degree. So that kind of just like encompasses all sorts of design, communication, marketing, advertising, whatnot. So went to school for that and then graduated, got an internship at just a graphic shop here in town. So I just worked on the back end of stuff like printing things, setting things up for large format, designing things. So it was really nice to kind of get at that time, which seems so long ago, a little bit of background knowledge in the actual like printing side of things. But obviously, we're very much more digital now than we are print. But it was just a nice little background that I got right away. And then I ended up getting my first big girl job at an agency here in town and was there for a little while. And then, kind of got burnt out there, wanted to get into a different agency. So I applied to Catapult Marketing, is what it was at the time. And that's where Abbey was, probably a few years prior to when I started. So, started there, really got, like was so excited about that opportunity. I remember calling my husband from the parking lot after the interview and I'm like, I think I got it. Like
Oh,
I
that's so
think I did it. And he's just like, good for you, good for you. So yeah, got in there and that was shopper marketing. So that was our experience in the agency world there and got to touch a lot of different brands, work on a lot of different campaigns. So, really dabbled in a lot of that different stuff as far as
Mhm.
marketing and advertising goes, and liked it, like, loved my job there for quite a while. I think I was there probably 8 years. Abby was there a little more, 10, 12,
10, 11.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
So, there for a while, but when it got, I always liked to have my own creative side thing as well. So prior to even getting that agency job at Catapult, I was doing freelance work on the side. So I had maybe a handful, like five-ish clients here in Minnesota at the time, and I just ran my side thing while also having that agency job. It wasn't anything huge. It was just fun projects and clients that I got to work with locally that, I would get here and there. So absolutely loved doing that. But then merging that with also having this full-time agency job that took up a lot of time and energy, it was really hard to do both. And so I tried for a while to kind of build my own freelance on my side, just me solely, but that is also really hard. So I kind of got to a point where I was like, I have to decide, am I going to do my own thing and like quit my agency job and really have to like eat ramen and like not have a
Scrap it
social
up.
life or am I going to look for a different opportunity out in the marketing world? Or Abby came along and that's when we were like, why don't we start something together? And I was like, wow, that sounds way less intimidating because there's two
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah.
I've worked with Abby for years, so I already know our working relationship is great and it's
Mhm.
there. And we have two completely different brains as far
Yeah.
as like what the marketing world needs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how Duo was born,
I
essentially,
love
is that we both had these passions outside of our full-time agency job that we were reaching for, but we couldn't quite get it without that other person, and we didn't know it at the time, but we kind of needed each other. So
Is that not the most beautiful thing ever? And it's like, and Abby, like in your story, you were saying the teacher was just like, well, why don't you just start your own business, right? And it's so interesting because I was doing an interview earlier, and she had like an aha moment like that too, where it was a connection of a connection. That was just like, why don't you just start your own business? And it's like whatever you believe in, the universe, God, whatever. It's like they just place these people into your lives for a reason. And I can totally see that with the two of you. Because one of my questions, as you were both talking, is it's like, it seems like Abby, like you must do the SEO maybe the tech side, and then Courtney, you do the design, right?
Mhm.
And all of that. And so I feel like that must just complement each other so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That is how we worked at our agency. So
Mhm.
I ran the account side. So I was the one like working the day in, day out with our clients, and then Court ran the design side. So she was the one building everything the client needed essentially. And
Mhm.
that's how we worked for years. So we actually, when we both first started at the agency, we weren't on the same team. So, and you still engage and interact. Like we had
Mhm.
over 100 people at the company, but so you definitely still talk to everyone, but
Mhm.
weren't as close until we started working on the same client. And the
Mhm.
second we started working on the same client, that's when we knew that we worked together really well. Like
Yeah.
we would at times just eliminate the rest of the team and be like, hey, let's just talk and figure this out for the client. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny how it kind of all evolved too, because I don't think that we never like both spoke about our past and like these one-off projects that we were doing. It was
Yeah.
never like us telling each other like, "Hey, I'm doing this for my design thing. What are you doing for your SEO thing?" It was more like we were so burnt out where we were
Mhm.
that we would leave and get coffee all the time. And I remember asking Abby one day, I was like, what is the next big thing?" Like in my brain initially I was like, okay, there's Snapchat, there's TikTok, like let's put our
Mhm.
brains together and be like this next big thing, like what is it? And she just like stopped and looked at me and she goes, why don't we just do what we're doing now but as like our own business? And I was like, wow, yeah, that's genius.
Oh
Let's
my,
do that.
okay, so now that we're at that point in the story, walk us through. So like did you both just say like peace out, see ya, like to the job? Like
We wish.
how I support that. I love that.
yeah.
So walk us through like so you guys both agreed like why don't we just do this together? What happened next? And then also how long ago was this? Like how long have you guys been in business?
Yeah. So we've been in business. I feel like I've been saying 3 years for a year. So maybe it's 4, but
Yeah.
between 3 and 4, 3 and 4 years since we were born. And a year and a half into it is when I quit. And then Court quit last year,
Yeah,
right?
last June
So
actually. Yeah.
Court's coming up on a year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Oh,
year of full-time
congratulations.
duo.
That's so
Yeah.
exciting.
So basically, we did both for a while, but how organically Court had already gotten someone who came to her for design on her
Mhm.
freelance,
Mhm.
but wanted more than that. So we thought that would be a really great first client just to take out and test it. And so we did. We did. And at that point, we were kind of doing anything and everything because
Yeah.
that's what we did at the agency world. We
Mhm.
just, if you need marketing, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. We're smart enough to figure it out,
Right.
which is true. But we took that client, we tested it, and I think like midway through that project is probably when we were like, okay, let's like do the LLC and let's like make it legit
Mhm.
because at first we just started
Mhm.
without the name and without everything else, and then we decided that we needed to work with a copywriter to help us kind of like ideate like okay we have all these thoughts of like who we want to be, we know we're a group of 2, we know that we want to work with like passionate entrepreneurs and small businesses, like what should we be called, what's our mission, what's our vision, because we knew that that stuff was like super important. So that is the very first thing we did is we put our money together and we paid a copywriter and had them design this for us, and she came up with Duo Collective, which is our name and perfect.
Mhm.
I was gonna say that just like seems so perfect, like the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic duo. I love
Yep.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what hardships would you guys say that like you navigated, whether it was at the start, whether it was at a scaling point, but like what have you guys had to navigate in your business that kind of like threw you for a little bit of a loop?
Oh, that's a
Lots.
great question. Yeah.
Or like which one do you want to talk about?
Right.
I would say one of the very first things when Abby went full time and I was still kind of double dipping, it was that was kind of a hard transition because she was putting all of her attention and focus into duo and I just couldn't do that. So
Right.
from 9 to 5, I'm, jamming on my agency job. And then after that, I, worked until midnight every night on duo. So I think at first navigating that I felt so guilty because I was just like, Abby, I'm so sorry that you're pouring so much into this and I
Yeah.
can't give as much as you, but at that time it didn't make sense for me to quite leave my full-time job yet. So I think figuring that out at first was a little tough, but we got there.
Yeah, that was the point where we weren't yet paying ourselves, or we were paying ourselves very little. So we decided to take the money and invest in a coach, and that was like the best investment we ever made, because she was she was basically a therapist for us too.
Yeah.
Because we would both talk to her about like, I feel guilty, or I feel guilty, or like I felt at the time like I was telling Courtney what to do.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have capacity to make the decisions that I had to make for our business. So I had to be the one to make the client timelines, to set things up, to make those decisions, and basically tell Courtney what her task was this week, because she didn't have capacity to do that. Like, even just, it takes so much brain power just to even think about what the deliverables are or how to craft them out. So we definitely, that was the best investment, because she helped Courtney let go and understand, like, you don't need to be in everything at all times. Like, you just need to do the things you need to do to move forward.
Yeah.
And then it helped me understand that, like, I don't need to feel bad about telling her what to do, because I have to run the business if she's going to quit. So, like, we needed someone else, an outside party, to tell us that, because
we felt bad telling each other that. Like,
right. Well, I can
and
imagine.
it's so funny, because after Abby like expressed that to our coach, like on a Zoom call, I looked at Abby and I said, "You have no idea how thankful I am for you to just be like, hey, do 1, 2, 3, and that's what's delivered to the client, and we're good to go." And then it was nice to hear that, like, our coach was like, "Courtney, it's okay that you're not a part of everything." Because for a while there, I was like, Abby, people are not going to think our business is 2 people. They're going to think it's 1 person, and they're not seeing me at all or hearing me at all. So it was just nice to have that our coach come in and say, like, hey, this is okay if it's a little messy or a little different up front. You guys are going to get through this, and it'll be different later. So
yeah, particularly the new client calls. Like, anytime we did a new discovery call, that was the hardest part, because from my perspective, I had to plan times that worked with Courtney's schedule. But when Courtney has time, she can't be sitting in on client calls. She needs to be doing the work. So it was like so difficult to figure out what to do. And our coach was just like, Abby, you take the calls. Courtney will do, like, she'll make herself present in videos or like pre-recorded content, and you guys will move forward that way. But, like, Abby, you need to be the one to do like those introduction calls, because managing 2 calendars with a corporate schedule just isn't going to work.
It was hard. Yeah.
So, just out of like my pure curiosity, I just like wrote this down. How do you guys navigate sales calls now? Are you both on the sales call, and like, do you like have a flow of like who talks when and who closes it, or how does that work? How did you guys figure that out?
Yeah, I would say so. Abby's actually way better at like client communication, I would say, than I am. But that's because at the agency world, that's literally what she did every single day. She spoke to the client way more. Being on the design side at the agency, we didn't get a whole lot of exposure with the clients unless if it was us presenting our work. So I have to give kudos to Abby there. She's way better at that whole client communication thing. And I think it kind of, it's funny because we don't really talk about it, but whenever we kick off calls with clients, Abby tends to be the person that starts to lead it. And it kind of just naturally flows that way. And then, like, I'll pop in if it's, specifically about branding or something with, their social feed as far as like creative goes. So I would say she tends to like start them off and lead them. And then I just like naturally kind of just infuse myself in throughout.
I think that's just like the perfect flow too, because I think if you are both like forward facing like that, I can definitely see clashing, because it's hard, right? Like, if you like naturally have that ability to want to lead the call, have the conversation, right? Then it's hard to have 2 people doing that. So it really just seems like you guys like even each other out, balance each other out, I should say, so perfectly.
It works nice. Our corporate like experience at the agency definitely helped that, because those are the conversations that I feel like a lot of new business owners, especially if they're partners, do have to have.
Right.
But for us, we naturally fell into what we were used to, but we know where we want to go. Like, we also know, like, if Courtney was really passionate about talking to the clients, then we'd talk about it and I'd let her talk, or lead the calls.
Abby is definitely like let's get on the phone and talk to the client. I'm like, can we just email them?
Can we just like text them? Because I see, so I'm assuming like extrovert, more introverted, right?
I wouldn't even say I'm an introvert. I would just say, yeah, I mean, maybe when it comes to clients, I guess. Like,
I get it. I mean, I totally get that. I would say like I'm like an extroverted person, but sometimes I'm like, let me just text you. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
takes a lot out of you.
It all kind of depends. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
funny. I would say, but it's funny because when it comes to like the reels that we do, I feel like I'm like, Abby, let's do this
Oh,
dance,
yeah.
and she's like, oh hell no. I'm like, come
I
on.
love that. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Like,
I would say like we're extroverted and introverted in our own ways,
yeah.
and it comes in at different plays of our business. So.
For sure.
That's awesome. That seems so. So how do you guys navigate? Like, how do you problem solve together, right? Like, or how did you learn how to problem solve together? Or when conflict arises, I'm sure, because like in every business it does. How do you guys have those conversations, or how did you learn how to have those conversations with each other? In case anyone's listening who wants to go into business with somebody else, but is kind of nervous on how to navigate all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have always been like big advocates of talking before like you let that anger bubble or that frustration like blow up, because even if it's silly, like we have had
Mhm.
like really silly conversations about things where it's like I feel like this or I feel like that, and it's just like you just you just have to talk about it even if
Mhm.
it's like before it becomes an issue. And I think the biggest thing, and we don't experience this that much now,
It
but we
was a lot in the
definitely,
beginning,
it
but
was a lot in the beginning. It took some time for us to kind of like figure out how to communicate or like when to communicate to each other, but a lot of our struggles were with not knowing what the other one was doing at certain times. So I think like that was the hard part, is like, are you working on that? Or like, you know, like when something is due, or like just like the project management of it. And that's where we got we use Asana now
Yeah, I was gonna
to
say
manage everything.
something.
yep.
Yeah,
So that is extremely helpful because we have our own priorities boards, and I typically will update the priorities board with all of our clients. So I'll put whatever is due on Courtney's board, mine on my board. We both know what our jobs are for the week, and we do that for client and our own stuff.
Business, yep.
So like when we set our own timelines for our own business of things that we want to do, we do it that way, and we also set a point of like ownership basically
Mhm.
on by our own platforms. So I manage our blog, Courtney really manages Instagram,
Mhm.
I manage
Pinterest. Yep.
Pinterest, yep,
I
and then
do things on the website, like any updates on the website.
so like we clearly, like we both still touch both, but
Mhm.
we have clear owners of like who's going to run what.
Yeah.
So then even when questions arise, it's kind of like, okay, if there's a conflict here, like you're the lead on that one. So like you should take it versus the other one. So I think
Mhm.
that's kind of how we set things up, and then that we don't have those issues anymore, I would say.
No, we really don't. It's been nice after, and I think like our coach helped us with that a
Mhm.
lot too, and just like not like we're pretty much just like a married couple. Like you have to communicate, you know, and because if you don't communicate, it's going to boil up,
Yeah.
and then you're just going to unload, and that's not healthy for anybody in this
Yeah.
scenario. So
Mhm.
it's all about just that open line of
Yeah,
communication.
for sure.
Even if it is awkward, you just
Mhm.
have to get it over with. And
Mhm.
like Abby said, I feel like we don't hardly have any awkward conversations
I know.
anymore.
I was actually just trying to think of an example of the last time. I mean, I put fight in quotations because we don't fight,
No,
but I was trying to think of like the last time we got into like a mini argument, and I can't even remember.
no, which is
That's
good.
awesome.
It is good.
That's huge. I feel like there's so many people out there who would not be able to say that. That's awesome.
It's definitely, and we had practice coming into our business. So I'd say like
Yeah.
even other businesses that are 3 years in might feel like they still get into those, but we also like we had a lot of practice before doing our thing, and then we definitely fought through it for at least a year and a half until we
Mhm.
were like, okay,
Yeah.
like this is what, and we both are clearly aligned in where we want the business to go and how we
Yeah.
want to grow. And I think unless you're clearly, if you're not clearly aligned, then you're always going to have those like squabbles basically
Mhm.
for where you want to go.
So what would you guys say, and you can answer this individually if you want, like what would you say was the biggest learning curve going from 9 to 5 employee, right, to now co-founder?
When do you shut it off?
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's hard.
I would say that's hard. And also just having a set structure as far as like your day to day goes. And like, obviously, like working from home and COVID kind of threw a wrench in that. But I think just like figuring out, well, and maybe this is just a personal thing, but just I'm not just good at like, okay, I'm going to wake up at 7, I'm going to start working at 8, I'm going to eat my lunch at noon, I'm going to log off at 4. Like I'm like, I kind of work when I'm like, when I've got that creative flow and it's really
Yeah,
strong.
I
So
can
I'll
get
work like a full day for like 10 hours, and then the next day I'll work for like 2 because I'm
Yep,
just like, I can't
I'm
today or
similar to
something.
that. Yeah.
So I feel like Abby's got more structure there than I do, but I would say, you're not, when you run your own business, you don't have to be to the office by 9 because your boss can physically see you, and then everybody leaves at 5. So that's when you leave too. So it's a
Mhm.
little different
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
that.
I think I am opposite in terms of like I always feel like there's something to catch up on, but
Yeah.
I'm not always productive. So I need to learn when to like just focus on the productivity at part of it and like shutting off. So I think that it's interesting because like it's your own business. So every second you work is every second you can push it forward.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels hard to stop, but we have to remember like we got into this business for the flexibility,
Right.
for this time
Right.
to be spent with our family, for like, for example, I just went on vacation, and at first I was like stressing about how I was going to work for 2 weeks in Arizona when how was I going to do this without the kids in daycare and with so much family around, and like where would I go? And then I was
I
like,
told her, I was just like, how about you just don't worry about it? Like,
How about
I'm
you
here to,
still?
I'm here to take care of. And that was when she was gone that 2 weeks, like our social probably suffered a little bit because I wasn't posting every day like we do. But those are the things too that you need to remind yourself that like, you don't need to be there 100% of the time
mm-hmm,
all the time. And so, I did my best to keep it going the 2 weeks she was gone, and she worked a little bit, but I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I just told her, I'm like, just don't worry about
yeah,
anything. Just
take a
go.
real vacation.
Just go, just do it. Oh, well,
Yeah,
I'm glad that you mostly didn't work because that is good to
right.
just like really shut it off because then you probably feel so refreshed coming back and like we all have to reset. But I could definitely hear both of you on those. I can definitely relate in terms of like
Mhm.
it's hard to give yourself the structure because it's you holding yourself accountable and it's really
Mhm.
easy to go get drinks at 1 p.m. on a sunny 75 day when
Right.
your husband walks in and is like, hey, I'm out of work early, you want to go to the bar? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Or like you want to go get lunch, or a girlfriend call. Like it's easy to just kind of sneak out, and it's like the fine line between like that's why we're doing this, but then also to get there we really need to like put in the work at the same time,
Mhm.
and like
Mhm.
just drawing that line. But it's Courtney, I like how you said that you just kind of do it in your flow.
Mhm.
Like when you feel the creativity flow, like you can sit down for 10 hours and the next day it's 2. And so I can, it's like I do a combination of the both of you guys. And then some
Yeah.
days I'm like, all right, bing, bang, boom. And it just is like kind of like dependent on the mood almost, which
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know is
For
like if
sure.
it's always the best thing, but it works.
Right.
What advice would you guys give people who are listening who want to start an agency?
Whew. Um,
Well, my first piece of advice is going to sound like big and fluffy and, just cliche, but to do it, to
Yeah.
just do it. I think I had always, when I started freelancing way back when, before we even started Duo, it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, have my own business, do my own thing, be my own boss, like make our own future. And even when we, both quit our full-time gigs for Duo, we were terrified. We're like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? But once we quit and we solely focused on Duo, we started to grow. We had more clients than we could, almost hardly handle. And we were like, wow, we can do this. Like this can actually happen if we put our mind and our time to it. So I think, quitting that full-time, big corporate job or a big agency job to start something a little smaller and do it yourself is super scary. But like people always say, I wish I would have done it sooner.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I never believed that phrase or saying until I was the person there, but I wish I would have done it sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think even what my teacher had said to me that day of like, why don't you just do it yourself? Like that goes for so many things of like, if you're waiting for a promotion or you're waiting to start your business or you're waiting for like that idea to come, it's like, why not just start something, because that will spiral into something else. And that just kind of is the starting point. And I think the very first thing we did was get a name and get an
Mhm.
LLC, which getting an LLC is what, $200, I think,
Yeah.
and it's literally 15 minutes of your time, but
Yeah.
it gives you that feeling of being legit
Mhm.
that makes you move and gets you
Mhm.
excited. Like, I think those are two of the easiest things that you can do just to get off the ground.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So, what is one thing that you wish you guys could go back and tell yourselves at the start of your business?
Oh, wow, that is such a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked us that.
I know.
I at the end of my episodes, I always ask, and I just looked at the clock and it's 3:33. I don't know if you guys are into angel numbers, but I always ask my guests that, and I do it selfishly because I love their responses so much, and I'm like, one day I want to make a book out of all this. But
Mhm.
people's responses are just so I take notes on them like all the time, and I hope everyone listening does the same because it's like I just feel like we all kind of walk our journeys to be able to kind of like spew out the wisdom to somebody who's navigating it now. And so yeah, I'm curious to hear.
Yeah. I think when we first started, it was like, were we gonna make it? And I feel like every entrepreneur
Mhm.
continues to have that, like, forever. Like, all of a sudden, all of our clients could go away, our audience could disappear. Like, everyone has that fear because that's the role of entrepreneurship. Like,
Yep.
nothing is guaranteed. But I think what I'd tell ourselves is, like, not to put so much pressure on doing it so fast. Like, just taking the opportunity to, like, enjoy those beginning days of running a business, because it is like, I mean, for us it was like tacos and champagne and like fun brainstorms and
Yep.
brunches, and like it was so fun. Like, we didn't have any strict, like, have to do things, which, like, of course, like, we're at a great stage in our business too, but it's like bigger, so we have like more responsibilities than we did back then. And I think that honeymoon phase, like, just enjoy it, try to enjoy like those moments because it is so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good one. Oh boy, what would I say? I would say maybe not to stress yourself out too much, because I feel like I'm a very stressful person to begin with. So I think when I, took that leap of starting our business and like quitting my full-time job, I was super just like wigged out. I probably didn't necessarily look it, but inside I was just like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, is this gonna make it? What does my life look like now? Like, it's completely changing from going from corporate to something small into like running your own thing. So, how do I want to show up as a boss for myself, or how do I want to show up as a partner for Abbey? um, you know just figuring out all of that. I just wanted to figure it out so soon, and it kind of stressed me out. So again, like, enjoy that honeymoon phase, but also don't stress yourself out to the point where you're like gonna break, or you're like, I can't do this. Like, I have to go back to, the quote unquote comfort of
Mhm.
a corporate job, because you leave a lot of comfort things when you leave the corporate world. Um, but that doesn't mean that you're not gonna gain different comforts. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I
It's
think
like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
yes,
And just like
yes.
trusting yourself to know that like you will figure it out, right? Like
Hmm.
we all, regardless of if you throw in the towel, like you have to go get a bartending, like what it is, like we always as entrepreneurs as we figure it out. Like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs are the most resilient human beings I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. I
Like
even told my husband, I said, if I need to, like, because I mean, he's an entrepreneur too. So that was a big thing.
mm,
Like, we'd both be running our own businesses, and we're like, oh my God, what does this look like?
Mhm.
But I told him, I was like, okay, if we're not making enough for Duo, like, I will go and work at Starbucks. I promise
yeah,
you. Like, I'll be a barista and do Duo. I promise you. Just like, let this happen.
we'll make it work because like that's it. Is like you just want it so badly, and it especially I find if you get a taste of that 9 to 5 life of just being like chained to the desk situation, you just want to break free so badly. We all have our own reasons why, right? That you will literally do anything to do that, like come
Hmm.
hell or high water. And if there's a will, then like Lord knows that there's gonna be a way.
Yeah,
Right. Yep.
for
And I think
sure.
that's so yeah, like I love that message. It's just like go with the flow of it and just like really
Mhm.
try hard to not get in your head so much. And if anyone knows how to do that, let me know because I haven't cracked the code on that one yet
No.
at all. Oh my gosh. So to wrap up here, ladies, please let everyone listening know where can they find you, how can they work with you, and where can they get in touch?
Yes. Well, you can find us at duocollective.com. That's everything lives there, everything we've ever created. So that is kind of our hub. And you can also listen to us on Duo On Air podcast on any of the listening platforms you prefer, and our Instagram duo.collective.
Awesome. So everything's in the show notes below, guys. Definitely check them out, give them a follow, and listen to that podcast. It's awesome. And I will be on there soon. So I'll put our podcast episode below in case you guys want to listen to that one. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for
Thanks.
having us.
Did you enjoy today's episode? If so, I would be super appreciative if you left a review and a rating and shared this with a friend so that I can continue to bring you value every single week. I'll see you next time.